Good afternoon. Thank you so much to everyone who is joining us on Facebook Live for our annual City Manager Update. We appreciate you joining us today for our what we think is our last virtual luncheon, which is yay, very exciting. So today we are very fortunate to be sponsored by our good friends at Port of Seattle, who have done truly an amazing job at reaching out to the East Side over this past year and a half, maybe. So thank you so much to Carrie Pravitz for joining us. She is the East King County Community and Government Relations Manager. Carrie, take it away.
Thank you, Samantha, and good afternoon, everyone. The Port of Seattle is proud to sponsor today's City Manager Luncheon featuring Triplett and to support the Kirkland Chamber. Through my position, as Samantha mentioned, I'm the East King County Community and Government Relations Manager at the Port. I manage the relationship for the Port of Seattle at over a dozen chambers and economic development groups on the East Side. So I just want to make sure all of you know how special the Kirkland Chamber is and how much heart and soul Samantha and her team put into their work on behalf of all of us members. If we were in person, I would expect all of you to give this team a standing ovation. So I'm just going to clap like this. Maybe Kurt can help me. We can raise the roof. Thank you, Samantha. We really appreciate everything your team does for this community. Since we just had Commissioner Cho speak to the Kirkland Chamber last month, my remarks about the Port are going to be very brief. At the Port of Seattle, our mission is to promote economic opportunities and quality of life in the region by advancing trade, travel, commerce, and job creation in an equitable, accountable, and environmentally responsible manner. Over the past year, the equitable part of our mission has been front and center in everything we do. Recently, our commissioners conducted 13 listening sessions across King County to get feedback on our equitable economic recovery efforts. Thank you to Samantha for participating in the listening session we had with other East Side leaders. The main takeaway from these listening sessions was that the Port is going in the right direction, but we needed to go faster. We need to do more. The feedback from these is going to be taken into our budget process so we can do that, so we can do more, support the communities more, go faster, and go further in our efforts for an equitable, sustainable, and inclusive recovery. I look forward to hearing what City Manager Triplett has to say today, and I also look forward to continuing to partner with the Kirkland Chamber in the future. Thank you, Samantha. Back to you.
Thank you so much, Carrie. What a very nice thing to say. We appreciate you very much. Thank you. So moving right along, we are going to get started with our speaker today. I will tell everyone in the audience there is an opportunity to ask questions of the city manager. Please put your questions into the Facebook chat at any time, and then I will read them to the city manager at the end of the event, but you can add them at any time to get them into the queue. So for our featured speaker is Kurt Triplett, who we've been fortunate to have as our city manager. He was hired in June of 2010, so this is his annual event celebrating his anniversary as our city manager. He has a very lengthy resume, which I have read many times, and he has done, I must say, a very good job at leading Kirkland during COVID, the pandemic that started right here in our own city. So thank you, Kurt, for your leadership during this time, and we would love to hear the update. I will turn it over to you.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Samantha. Thank you, everyone who is tuning in today. It's always a great honor and pleasure to come and speak before the Chamber. I have 14 slides, including the first one I'll show you, and about 15 minutes of an update, and then hoping it's a fun and frolicking discussion afterward with lots of questions. Before I get to sharing my PowerPoint, I just wanted to say a couple thank yous. First, thank you to the Port of Seattle for sponsoring this event and for all that they have done for the East Side. They've been a tremendous partner, I know, for the Chamber, but also for the City of Kirkland. They've helped us do Startup 425 and Restart 425, which we did during the pandemic, to really help small businesses get through the challenges that people face. And a huge number of the people who signed up for those classes that we've done in partnership with the Port and the other cities have been disadvantaged business owners and women and people of color. So a really exciting program that's going great guns thanks to the Port of Seattle. I also want to thank the Chamber of Commerce for being a great partner for this last year. As you know, this has been a year and a half unlike any other, and the mayor's State of the City speech was a pretty amazing video that recapped everything that happened in 2021 and early 2020 and 2021. And that's now on our webpage. I think it's also maybe on the Chamber's website as well. And I would encourage anyone who hasn't had a chance to see that yet to watch it. There was a lot of really amazing history about how we all came through this together. And particularly our partnership with the business community was a key piece of that. And then finally, I want to say thank you to all the businesses out there for keeping your businesses here in Kirkland. I know this was an extraordinary year for all of you as well. And we're just so grateful. We know you have choices about where you want to be, and we are just so thrilled that you choose to be in Kirkland and choose to continue to invest here despite all the challenges we've all faced as a nation and a region. So thank you for picking us, and we hope for a long and fruitful partnership with you in the future. So I am going to go ahead and share my screen, and what I'm going to talk about tonight is, hold on, I think after all of this, we would all know how to do this. All right, I'm going to look to Samantha and see if this is now shared. So hopefully you can all see that now. Samantha, is that up on your screen?
Yes.
Great. All right. So the best way to provide an update for every major issue that's going on in the city is our 2021-2022 city work program. And so those of you who've had a chance to attend this discussion in the past know that we do this every 2 years concurrently with our budget program. And by walking you through what we're focusing on in 21-22, I'll pretty much cover all the topics that most people are interested in. But as I said, there's lots of time at the end for any questions. The past city work program items are actually posted on the city's website. So if you want to see what we've done since 2011 all the way up till today and what we've accomplished, that is on our website, and particularly on the City Council webpage, so you can see that. Also on that webpage are the City Council goals for the city that the work program is designed to help us achieve. And so I won't cover those today, but those are available for anyone who wants to look at them. All right, as I said, 14 slides, including the first one, and I'm going to jump right in. The city work program was actually adopted by the council by resolution. And what it is it's really the task for the city manager and the staff of the city to accomplish over the next 2 years. It's essentially how the city council grades us and how we hope the community grades the city for major achievements that hopefully improve the quality of life of our city. So as Carrie mentioned, from the port, the entire nation, and certainly the region and certainly the city of Kirkland are looking at ways that we can improve the safety and respect of Black people and reduce systemic racism and poverty in Kirkland. So the number one item on our city work program is to implement the resolution we passed last fall, referendum 5434. And there's a whole series of initiatives included in this. This could be its own set of presentations just in and of itself that could take a whole hour. But like I mentioned earlier, there's a series of web pages that contain most of these initiatives, but there is one dedicated to referendum resolution 5434. And it goes and provides an update on just about everything that we're doing with respect to 5434. But there's 3 key community conversations that are going to be coming this summer and fall that we're hoping the business community and all members of the community will participate in related to 5434. And these were highlighted at a May 18th study session that we did for the City Council, and they're going to be highlighted at future City Council meetings this fall and all the way to next year. So the 3, what I call the 3 challenging conversations and 1 amazing opportunity. So the 3 challenging conversations that we need to have as a community is the first is related to school resource officers in the Lake Washington School District. As we did our Black-centered community conversations, one of the topics that came up over and over again is a desire by the Black community to have school resource officers taken out of Lake Washington School District. And this is something they're asking for in all school districts throughout the state, not just here. And so that's a conversation that our council is going to be having in partnership with the Lake Washington School District this fall and the spring. And we're going to be looking to every stakeholder in the community to help us with that conversation. So matters of race and school safety are challenging for all of us. But we think if any place can have that conversation well, it's the city of Kirkland. Second big conversation that we're looking to have out of referendum 5434 is on body-worn cameras. So when we first passed the resolution, one of the things we asked about was whether we should have body-worn cameras on our police officers. Initially, that seemed like a great idea, but there's also been some issues that we've all learned about body-worn cameras since then. But the City Council did budget for the possibility of having body-worn cameras on our police officers. And we intend to have a community conversation again this fall and heading into next year to make a decision in 2022 about whether that's something that we want to see in our police department for safety and accountability. And then the third conversation that we think is likely to happen is a conversation about how the Houghton Community Council can join the city in evaluation of the makeup of the Houghton Community Council and its decisions and how they relate to issues of Resolution 5434. So the City Council has reached out to the Houghton Community Council members and begun that dialogue. And the city has also contracted with a consultant who's doing an equity gap analysis for the entire city. And one of the things that she is looking at is also the Houghton Community Council and whether there's some issues there that need to be addressed. So each of these three topics, I think, are very necessary but very challenging conversations for the community as a whole. And we look forward to addressing them head on. But there's also one amazing opportunity that's coming along with this. In addition to the transparency and accountability measures that are already happening in the police department, we also are looking to implement community responders in the city of Kirkland. And our city council has given us budget and direction to make this happen. And what we're trying to do is have mental health professionals and social workers who are not police officers who would be available to help people who have mental health needs or issues of homelessness and things in our community. And the impetus for this was based on issues, some of the programs you've heard, like the Cahoots model down in Oregon and other national models that have non-police officers responding to some of these cases and calls at night, especially where people need help, but they don't need a police officer as the responding person to help. And so we're in the process of creating these new positions. They're fully funded in the budget. We're going to have 4. And our goal when we're done and have this program implemented is that we'll have a combination of emergency medical technicians paired with mental health professionals and social workers who can get out and help people and connect them with services. And I think that's really exciting. And we hope Kirkland will be really on the cutting edge of this when we get to that program implementation. So as I said, for item number 1, we've got some challenging conversations and some amazing opportunities ahead of us. And we'll be checking in with our council frequently and happy to talk to any group about any of these topics in small groups or large groups. So the second item on our work program is to complete construction and open new Fire Station 24 in Juanita. And so we broke ground late last fall. You can see this is going up like gangbusters. This new Fire Station 24 is actually across from Juanita Elementary School on the corner of 100th and 132nd Street. And the photo that you see down on the right is an actual photo of where we are now. So you can see the superstructure is already up. This fire station is very exciting. It's going to be opening in mid-October, and it will be a fully staffed brand new fire station that will provide services immediately when it opens. One of the cool things about Station 24, new Station 24, is not only is it going to improve service immediately to the North Juanita and Finn Hill areas, but it's also going to reduce response times throughout the city because it's really well positioned to support Station 27 in Totem Lake, to support Station 21 down at Forbes Creek, and to support Station 22, which is on the other side of Finn Hill. So huge investment by the City Council in public safety, and it's going to pay dividends as soon as the station opens. So we're very excited about Station 24. So continuing with the fire theme, one of the great things that happened in November of last year was that the voters of Kirkland approved our Proposition 1 for fire. So we had an emergency medical services ballot measure that was approved. And the City Council gave itself the task of making sure that we implement this quickly and the way the voters were expecting. So in March of this year, the Council did adopt the actual framework implementation resolution, and we are well underway. So one of the exciting things we've already done is secured an entire year's worth of personal protective equipment for police and fire. So as we all hope, COVID is coming to an end, but what it's really taught us is we need to be ready for the next pandemic. And so this ballot measure has allowed us to fund that personal pandemic protective equipment. We've also initiated the hiring of 20 new firefighters. So there will be 7 firefighters hired today, and by 2023, all 20 of those new firefighters will be hired. And then we'll be completing a design of new Station 27 in Totem Lake and designing Fire Station 22 for renovation. So those are the 2-year tasks. But I'm going to show on the next slide just a reminder of everything that's going to happen when the ballot measure is completed. So what you can see here, the fire stations are across the top, and by the time this ballot measure is fully implemented in 2026, all of our fire stations will either be brand new or significantly renovated. So Fire Station 21 in Forbes Creek will be renovated and upgraded with seismic retrofits. So will the Station 22 in Houghton. The new Station 24 will be built to the latest seismic standards and operational standards. Fire Station 25 in Finn Hill was just recently completed in 2018. We'll be upgrading Station 26, and then we'll have this brand new Station 27, which will also be built to the latest standards. So essentially, you'll have a brand new set of facilities, as well as a lot more firefighter EMTs to serve the entire community. Some things that we're really excited about when this is complete, as you can see here at Station 22, we're actually going to have 5 firefighters on shift at any time. What that actually means is that we have a dedicated aid car. So anytime there's an emergency call, 2 firefighters can go out on the aid car and respond, and it still leaves 3 firefighters behind to respond either to a fire or to another medical event. So this really doubles the capacity of the station and makes it much more effective in serving particularly the downtown, which as we know is growing by leaps and bounds, and then ultimately the station area plan, which we'll talk about later in this presentation. We're also adding a new firefighter to Station 24, so that opens with a full crew as soon as we're finishing in October. And we'll have the same dedicated aid car in Station 27, so they'll also be essentially a double crew. And finally, there's a 4th firefighter added to Station 26, which will allow it to go out in 2 crews of 2. So the voters really gave us an amazing opportunity to not just improve the stations themselves, but to dramatically increase our response times for both fire and medical calls. And the City Council is really stepping up and investing to make that happen as quickly as possible. So all of our staff will be hired by 2023. Our new Station 27 will be open by 2023. Station 22 will be renovated by 2023, and everything else will be finished by 2026. And we're very proud of how far that's going so fast. Another key element of our work program, and I know an issue that's important to all of us, is affordable housing on the east side. We definitely know that we are not an affordable region, and that that's becoming more and more of a problem, particularly for lower income folks and even workforce housing people that we need to support our restaurants and retail businesses. So the City Council has made this one of our top priorities to continue to invest heavily in new housing. And so there's a couple tasks in this. First, to initiate a permanent supportive housing project in Kirkland. And we're working with King County to try to find a location, probably a purchase of an older hotel where people who are chronically homeless can be provided the services and the shelter that they need, hopefully to provide stability and eventually maybe transition them, but if not, they have a place that they can stay safe and connected with services. We're also looking for a significant amount of new affordable housing in all of these redevelopments that are happening and the mixed use housing. And one in particular I want to highlight is some of you may know that the GMC dealership up in Totem Lake by the Fred Meyer, between the Fred Meyer and the Wendy's, has actually chosen to move to Bellevue. And the City of Kirkland is working with the affordable housing developer Inland Construction to actually turn that into a several hundred unit development for affordable and low income housing, and even some housing for those experiencing homelessness. So we're very much focused on bringing more housing to the city, and especially housing for low income people experiencing homelessness and workforce housing. So a lot more to be talked about in the housing realm, but we'll also be setting targets and tracking how we're doing. So we want to make sure that we are holding ourselves accountable to making progress in this area. Workforce item number 5 is, work program item number 5 is investing to keep Kirkland and the community safe and recovering from the pandemic. So this is another place where we had a strong partnership with the Chamber, which we're grateful for, things like the Shop Local Kirkland initiative and working last year with our CARES Act funding and being able to provide direct grants to businesses to help them. We look forward to doing that again with the American Rescue Plan Act funding. We have ARPA funding coming, and we're going to be doing the same thing, which is we've divided the pots into a significant amount of money to go directly to businesses. We'll also be bringing staff online to help us connect businesses with a lot of the ARPA money that's not going directly to cities. So there's so many programs out there under the American Rescue Plan Act, and we want to work with the Chamber to help connect businesses to those funding pots, as well as having some direct allocations from the City of Kirkland itself. You've probably seen our pop-ups. Our firefighters are out there providing vaccinations. We want that to continue. Some of you may have seen there was a story in the paper today that the City of Seattle has hit 70% vaccinations for people who are eligible. So kids who are 12 to 16 or adults, we would love to be a city that joins them in that 70% vaccination rate. And so one of the things we are doing, in addition to what people can do with their own private providers, is we are making our firefighters available everywhere we can to get people vaccinated. So you'll see more of them at places like grocery stores and anywhere that people gather. So watch for them over this summer as we try to get people vaccinated. A couple other things I want to talk about with respect to the investing in COVID recovery. The City Council approved what we're calling our Summer Action Plan. Some of the feedback that we've heard from a lot of folks, including members of the Chamber, is a real discouragement about what's happening with the City of Seattle, particularly with how the city looks and the way they're dealing with the issues of homelessness and tent encampments and so forth. One of the things that we are expecting in the City of Kirkland, because of our beautiful waterfront parks and our amazing downtown, is that as COVID lessens up and as more people are vaccinated and as the governor rolls back the restrictions, we're expecting to see huge turnout downtown and huge use of our parks, huge uses of our restaurants and our retail, which we hope will happen. And so the City Council is investing a lot in trying to make that go well. So they've authorized us to put in an additional amount of money for additional police to help us enforce downtown and to provide services. They've invested several $100,000 in more services for those experiencing homelessness so that we can get them to shelter and services that they need. They've allowed us to invest in new parks programs and extra lifeguards, and they've even given us a premium to pay folks so that we could actually accomplish this by hiring people for the summer. I just want to give one example of that. So there was a recent story of the City of Kent who needs to hire 17 lifeguards, and they only had one person apply. We actually need to hire 80 lifeguards for the City of Kirkland for our waterfront parks and our pool. And we came to our council about a month ago and asked them to allow us to do a $3 an hour premium so that we could get folks. And our council swiftly approved that, which we're grateful for. And my last discussion with my parks director, we have actually hired 82 lifeguards at a time when everyone else is having a hard time attracting any. So I think that's really a good example of how our City Council is really focused on making the summer go well for everybody. Item 6 on the work program is to continue our investments in multimodal arterials, and particularly with Juanita Drive and 100th Avenue. And these investments are things that would add bike lanes and pedestrian paths and make it much more safe to walk and bike and really give people an alternative to the automobile. So also be better for transit. So the target for the next 2 years is to complete the design and initiate construction of these two mega projects. We've also been somewhat successful in getting federal dollars for both of these projects and also some state dollars as well. And we're hoping to see even more money possibly from the federal infrastructure bills should they go forward this year. Here's some stuff that we're very excited about, which is 7, which is to complete the Totem Lake Connector, Totem Lake Park, and 132nd Square Park, and other investments to really improve the quality of life throughout the city. So you can see up in the upper top left here, the rendering of the Totem Lake Connector Bridge. This is actually underway. It's being constructed off-site, and we brought it and completed in 2022. You can see us starting to dig up the places for the footings for this bridge. But when this is completed, it's going to allow pedestrians and bicyclists to go over the busiest intersection in the city and also connect us all the way down to Bellevue as far as the Cross Kirkland Corridor and East Rail go, and all the way up north to Woodinville. And the King County is already pulling out the tracks to the north of us. and intends to extend the interim trail. So this will be a super cool investment that will connect basically Kirkland to all of the region north and south of us, as well as connect anyone who wants to use the corridor to the Totem Lake Park and the Totem Lake Village that's building up around this. So very excited about this investment. What you can see on the right is the actual boardwalk that's almost finished. We're actually going to have a boardwalk that's going to go all the way around Totem Lake. This again will allow people to go from the village of Totem Lake across the boardwalk to the corridor, or to go from the corridor to the village of Totem Lake, and really connect people's ability to walk and bike with the commerce that we see happening and the housing we see happening in the village of Totem Lake. Down below on the left is an actual photo just taken a couple days ago of the park itself. This is Totem Lake Park, which also has a restroom, which a lot of people have asked for. And this is something we're very proud about. It's an all abilities park. So it's designed for anyone of any ability, and extremely colorful and bright, and it's going to be opening soon. So pretty excited about that. That's an $8 million investment, almost complete. And then finally, 132nd Square Park is going to go under construction this summer. It won't be finished till next summer, but it's going to not only add another all abilities park, but it's also going to be our first artificial turf field with lights. And so that will be a huge increase in our capacity to provide recreation for our kids, both soccer, baseball, and new sports that we haven't had a chance to introduce yet. So pretty excited about that. And the last thing I want to say on this slide is that a lot of people have asked us about what are we doing with sort of the revenues of all of this development, and is growth paying for growth? And what's great about all of these projects is that there's a substantial amount of impact fees and real estate excise tax in these projects. So as we've seen those developers, both retail and residential, have been paying either transportation fees or parks fees in different ways, and also real estate excise tax as businesses and residents have been bought and sold, and all of those things are being invested. So tens of millions of dollars of these fees have gone into these projects. And so this is one of the ways we're trying to keep Kirkland livable and increase the capacity and the quality of life. So the other really big set of items facing us is to try to get these mega project investments from Sound Transit and WashDOT implemented here in Kirkland. And so we're trying to partner with Sound Transit and the State Department of Transportation and King County Metro to bring transit and opportunities here in Kirkland. So what you can see on the top is our 132nd ramp project. So this is going to come off 405 and open up new ramps that will allow access to the village of Totem Lake and Evergreen Health. One of the things that's really cool about this project is it was actually its own work plan item a couple years ago. And that sort of shows how the work plan works. We put it on the work plan, we go after it, we make it happen, and then we implement it. But the 132nd ramps were a work program item, and also kind of a brainchild of Dave Asher, former retired council member Dave Asher, said we need to go for $72 million from the state to make this happen. And when he suggested that, we were all a little astounded about the amount of money, but we put it on the list and we went for it, and our state delegation took the leadership of it, and this is now under design and will be under construction soon. This is also extremely important to, I know, a huge chamber member that we all care about, which is Evergreen Health, our largest employer. They really are focused on traffic congestion in and around the hospital and the ability of patients to come and get in. And so this investment of the 132nd Square ramps is really huge for them, also coupled with what's going to happen with Sound Transit. So this is going to benefit the whole community, but also our major employers in the Totem Lake area. In the upper right, you can see an example of the 85th Street Bus Rapid Transit Station. And this again is a mega investment of Sound Transit. It's a couple $100 million. And when it's completed, it will allow buses to come off of 405 to serve downtown and the new station area plan that we're developing. It will also allow people to access the bus, the HOV lanes and the toll lanes, which you currently cannot do from downtown. So this project, unfortunately, is caught up along with all the Sound Transit projects as Sound Transit is sort of reimagining their list and their implementation as they're facing some major cost overruns from some of their light rail projects and also some revenue losses from COVID. So we're trying to work really closely with Sound Transit to keep this project on track, and that is a major focus of our city council, and also we know Claudia Balducci, who represents this area for the King County Council and is a Sound Transit board member. So we could definitely use the chamber's help in working to keep that project on time and make sure that it actually happens. All right, getting close to the end here. So another topic is we begin to get into the land use planning. And we have as a work program item to designate Greater Downtown as a regional center. It already meets all the qualifications. So in some ways, this is a formality. And then coupled with that is we want to take advantage of that $300 million investment of Sound Transit and create a Northeast 85th Station Area Plan. And that's actually going to be the subject of the June 15th study session. So those of you who are interested in what's happening with the Station Area Plan, I encourage you to watch that and read the council packet that comes out on Friday. The Station Area Plan is a conversation we're going to be having with the community for the next year. And the council won't be taking any action on it till the end of the year and probably the beginning of next year as well. So I want to emphasize that no decisions have been made on the Station Area Plan, but the council is definitely listening to the community and has already narrowed the potential options for the station area. But I do want to say one of the exciting benefits of the Station Area Plan is right now today, Kirkland is way behind on meeting our job growth targets. We're doing very well in the housing targets, but we're about 15,000 down in the growth targets. And the opportunity to see some significant redevelopment that results in additional jobs for the city is an opportunity we want to take advantage of. The other thing we really want to take advantage of is really a transit-connected community that's gonna be served by this new bus rapid transit investment of Sound Transit. And the council also has a vision of helping develop more affordable housing for the community, as well as more park amenities and other sustainability investments. So part of the reason they've asked us to do this level of service, benefit, and impact analysis is to see, what are the real opportunities that can be created by the Station Area Plan, but also what would be the impact of the Station Area Plan on city services, things like police and fire services and parks and schools especially. And so we're going to be working all throughout the summer and the fall to get the answers to those questions, and then we're going to bring that back to the City Council for discussion and decision by the end of the year. But it's a really amazing opportunity to transform an area of our city that otherwise would likely convert to housing, and it would likely be luxury housing. So, one of the challenges we don't think about as much is that by doing nothing, you don't necessarily get the vision you want either. And right now, the economy delivers luxury apartments. And while that's not a bad thing in and of itself, it's really not our vision for something that's going to be next to this major investment by Sound Transit. And continuing the planning and land use stage, we are actually going to be starting our comprehensive plan update again. So I know it seems like we just finished that. That was in 2015. We're now back 2023, 8 years later, as required by state law. We'll be starting the comp plan process at the end of next year and really trying to get to the heart of it and finish it in 2023. So that's going to be the 2043 comprehensive plan update, and pretty much every plan we have will be part of that process. And so we'll be talking to the business community, we'll be talking to all of our neighborhoods and stakeholders on things like the Parks and Open Space Plan, the Transportation Plan, our Surface Water Master Plan, every element that goes into providing the services that our residents expect and our businesses expect. All of that's going to be updated in 2022 and 2023. So we definitely welcome the thoughts of any of you watching, and we would definitely encourage you to be part of this planning process because it's really going to set the stage for the next 20 years. And then finally, we have to always adopt our budget every 2 years. And the reason that the budget adoption is actually called out as a city work program item is the City Council made a lot of investments, particularly these Resolution 5434 investments such as community responders and setting aside money for body cameras and taking care of things like the summer action plan. And all those things are necessary for us to come out of COVID and start to address some of our issues of structural racism. But they also have created a potential deficit in the 2023-2024 budget. So we're doing what we need to do this year, but we know we have almost a $20 million gap in 2023-2024. So as we work on this in 2022, we're going to have to figure out how to balance that budget and bring that gap to closure. And there's a couple ways to do that. The first, of course, is we want to make sure that we're as efficient as possible and look for how to make our services cost effective. And maybe there's places that we need to reduce service in order to make sure that we balance. And the City Council is looking at using the American Rescue Act funds and other things to try to invest in one-time things that will make us more efficient and cost effective. But at the same time, we're going to also probably have to look at some new targeted revenue. and that's going to be a conversation the City Council is going to have in the spring of 2022. Some examples of the kinds of things we may have to talk about are an extension of our parking fees. And so we may look at considering parking fees on the street, not just in our parking lots, or maybe changing the amount of parking fees. We also may have to look at restructuring our business license fees to deal with the fact that we are now becoming a more urbanizing city, and perhaps it's time to consider something like a tiered set of business license fees. So yeah, no decisions have been made, and all of that's going to happen in 2022, but I know that each of those will be near and dear to the business community's hearts. So again, we encourage you to participate in those conversations. And then finally, the last piece of this, retaining Kirkland's Triplett credit rating. I just wanted to let you all know that we're very proud of the fact that just last month, we were reaffirmed by Standard & Poor's and Moody's as having a Triplett credit rating as we issued debt to pay for some of these projects I talked about. And once again, they lauded Kirkland for its strong financial standing and its great commitment to strong financial planning. So we're very happy to see those AAA credit ratings affirmed, and we want to keep them as we go forward. So that is a very quick overview of some very meaty topics. I wanted to leave a lot more time for people to ask questions, so I will just go ahead and pause there and open it up. So Samantha.
All right, thank you so much, Kurt. We do have a few questions, and I will just remind the audience that we have this shared in several neighborhood groups, and if you post in that discussion in the chat in the group, we will not be able to see it, so please click on the main video and add your questions in that main thread on our Kirkland Chamber Facebook page. Thank you. So our first question is, speaking of housing affordability, Kirkland recently nearly tripled some per unit fees on multifamily housing development. This nearly killed one development deal and will negatively impact the feasibility of future housing development. What, if any, additional cost increases on development of new housing is Kirkland considering?
Yeah, so the City Council has, over the last few months, looked at our impact fees, and there's 3 impact fees: a fire impact fee, parks impact fee, and a transportation impact fee. And the City Council has approved a park impact fees as well as fire impact fees. So they're still going to be looking at transportation impact fees. We recognize that those fees create a burden on housing developers, and adding costs is never something that we start out with. But at the same time, we are seeing tremendous growth in the amount of development that's happening. We're seeing a huge increase in the amount of buildings being built, and frankly, the cost of the housing that's being built is not affordable. And so there's a part of the community that expects that growth will pay for growth, and so impact fees are one way that we can do that. And so I think the City Council's worked really hard to try to strike a balance between being thoughtful about impact fees, but also not making them so burdensome that development doesn't happen here in Kirkland. But I think we have struck that balance, but it's certainly, if you're a builder, you may not agree with that. But I think if you're a resident who wants to see investments in the parks and the streets that I talked about earlier, you want to make sure that new development pays its fair share as well. So difficult conversation for everybody, but I think the City Council's done a good job of finding the balance. Other than those impact fees, I don't think we anticipate any other specifically targeted things for development.
Thank you. Will there be a bike lane from the Totem Lake Connector Bridge to the Totem Lake Village?
There won't be a bike lane per se, but one of the things that we did when we designed the Totem Lake Gateway project is we've created these really wide 10 to 15 foot sidewalks. And they're designed to be a shared use path for both bikes and pedestrians. So if you have a chance to go up there now, those sidewalks are actually finished, and you can see they're extremely wide. And that's the whole theory with the Village of Totem Lake as well, is that we'll have these shared use paths. So it's not a dedicated lane, but it's going to be a safe, separated lane. You'll be up on a sidewalk, and you'll be out of the traffic.
Great. Where is the city on surveying the community in consideration of zoning change along the 85th corridor?
So our station area plan project, as I said, we're going to be talking about this at the City Council meeting in the study session on June 15th, has an ongoing series of education outreach. So there was a couple public hearings that happened earlier on this year. There was a listening session the City Council just had in May. The council is going to continue to solicit input in a variety of ways. So we don't have a specific survey set up yet, but we are constantly reaching out to people to say, give us your input, give us your data, tell us what you want us to hear. And if people have a specific mechanism by which they want to be talked to, we're happy to do that as well. So I'll talk to our communications team about the potential to do a survey, but what we have really tried to do is reach out to all the property owners and tenants along 85th. As well as specific interest groups, and then create opportunities on our website and council meetings for people to provide input. So, but if there's more that people would like to see us do it, I know it's a top priority for the council to get that public input so we can look at those mechanisms as well.
So during the construction on the 85th Street freeway on and off ramps, what will that look like for the typical driver? Will they need to reroute to 70th and 116th instead of using 85th, or will there be some sort of ability to still use the 85th Street ramps?
That's a great question. So our work with WashDOT and Sound Transit is that there will always be access left no matter what the construction is like. So it will never be completely closed off. So there'll always be a way to get off the ramp and get access to 85th, either going east or west. But there's no question it's going to be challenging and congested, right, and confusing, because through all the various ways that they're going to have to do that construction, there's going to be lots of diversions and reroutes and so forth. So there will always be access, but if folks want to get off earlier, whether they're coming north or south, that'll probably be the simplest thing to do, but access will be retained throughout the development of the project.
Great. And then in the past, there has been a lot of conversation around adding some sort of transit to the Cross Kirkland corridor. Is that up for discussion anytime again in the future?
Yeah, that's another great question. So a couple things I'll say about that. So the current adopted master plan for the Cross Kirkland corridor talks about it being a shared use corridor with both transit and pedestrian and bike paths. The current interim trail use obviously doesn't have that happening, but the corridor itself is 100 feet wide throughout most of the corridor. That's narrow in some spots, and so that is our current adopted policy, that eventually there will be transit on there. The city council worked really closely with Sound Transit at the time to see if we could get Sound Transit to help invest in what we thought would be an appropriate amount of transit, which was basically bus system on the corridor. Sound Transit at that time wanted light rail, which our council from that time felt was far too impactful for the corridor, and so we didn't accept that. And in the end, there was no allocation in the Sound Transit measures for buses or anything else on the corridor with transit. Recently, in our conversations with the city council has asked that we do a CKC, a Cross Kirkland Corridor Master Plan update, where we can bring back the conversation about, so we've had the interim trail for a while. We know Sound Transit's not going to come back with an investment in transit in Kirkland for a while. So what should happen next? So I think that's the place where we'll have the conversation with the community about, should there be transit on the corridor? And if so, what and how? And how could it be achieved, right? The vision of the previous council was always to be something in the scale and values of the city of Kirkland. So what we had been talking about were things like all electric buses that would move on a dedicated right-of-way separate from the bikes and the transit. So they'd be quiet, they'd be emission-free, they'd be sustainable. But again, that was a vision that didn't happen yet. And so I think the community is going to have an opportunity when we do the CKC master plan update to say what they would like to see on the corridor.
Great. Are there any ballot measures coming up specifically for Kirkland that folks should know about?
So the city of Kirkland doesn't currently have any potential ballot measures. As I said earlier, we're very grateful that the voters of Kirkland said yes to Fire Proposition 1, and in 2018 said yes to the Police Proposition 1. King County is looking at renewing the Best Start for Kids levy this November. So they are in the process of placing that on the ballot, and the city of Kirkland has been very engaged with the county to try to get first housing into the Best Start for Kids so that the more affordable housing could be built as part of the levy, and also that there be demonstrable investment in the east side. One of the challenges we have with all the King County ballot measures is, while we don't mind being part of a regional funding source and making sure that the money goes where it's most needed, we also have significant needs on the east side, and we want to make sure that those countywide levies are also providing services to Kirkland, Redmond, Bellevue, and east side, because we do have needs here as well. So we're going to keep working on that, but that is one of the ballot measures that's coming up. In the conversations that we expect to have with the City Council in 2022 about future budgets and future funding sources, it's certainly possible that ballot measures could be talked about and explored. But again, right now, there's no particular ballot measure set for the ballot for the City of Kirkland anytime soon. I do know, I should say, that the Lake Washington School District is also evaluating going back to the voters for a potential bond measure, as well as some maintenance and operation levies. But not this year. I'm not sure when they'll be doing that, but I know they're talking about that.
Great. So a couple of things about housing that are coming up. So the City of Kirkland has discussed ADUs, or detached dwellings, some smaller use of space for helping with some of the housing crisis. Can you give us an idea of where the city is on ADUs, approval processes, pre-approved ADUs, anything along those lines?
Sure. I could give a high-level overview, but I know that the planning department would be happy to provide more details to anyone who wants a lot more details on this. So the great news is that the City Council adopted last year what we called our missing middle housing zoning. And there was a whole series of zoning changes to encourage accessory dwelling units, both detached and as part of the current dwelling. But it also included things like carriage houses and cottages, and pretty much any kind of development that could be an addition to a single family house or plot that would help create more affordable housing. And we recognize that even this is not going to be affordable in the sense of a lower income person being able to do it, but these are units that could help people stay in their own houses as they grow older, or allow their kids to come back from college and rent out, or rent out for secondary income that may allow them to continue their mortgage and stay in Kirkland. So there's a variety of ways that these kinds of investments, especially the ADUs, can be successful. When I last talked to the planning director, I think we had 180 permits that have been filed for ADUs, which is an extraordinary number. So there's a lot of people who are looking at it. How many are actually going to make it through the process and get built, we don't know, but it certainly seems to be like there's a lot of pent-up demand for the accessory dwelling units and carriage houses and cottage houses. So we're very excited to see that, and we are definitely motivated to make them happen. And I know we're already starting to get some feedback on ways we can further refine and improve the zoning and permitting process to encourage ADUs. So when we find a change that does make sense, we're happy to make it. I also want to emphasize that the accessory dwelling units are actually not subject to impact fees. So the City of Kirkland worked with the state legislature to exempt those. And so ADUs do not have to pay impact fees. And that's another way that we can keep them a more affordable kind of investment in the City of Kirkland. But seems to be working well. And we have a lot of other jurisdictions who are asking us to share our affordable housing zoning with them so they can hopefully do something similar.
Great. I've had a number of people from the Finn Hill neighborhood ask a somewhat similar question, so I'll kind of synthesize it down. Recently, there was a large plot of land that was clear cut for a development at Juanita Drive and 123rd. Can you comment on the current plan for trees and how that works within development, and whether or not that type of clear cutting of large spaces of tree density will continue in Kirkland, especially in areas like Finn Hill where they have a high density of trees?
Yeah, that's a very good question, a very complex question. So what I'll say is that the ongoing discussion about the tree code is something that's going to come back to the council. I'm going to be talking about it over the summer and probably final action in the fall. I think that the goal of the City Council is obviously to retain as many trees as possible. Trees are a huge ethic in Kirkland, and we all know the benefits they bring, both in terms of stormwater retention and improving air quality, and obviously just sort of the look and feel of the city. But one thing that people may not be aware of is that our previous tree code and our current tree code have never prohibited development on property. So that the code doesn't say you can't cut a tree down. What the code says is you should try to retain the trees that are possible to retain. I'm simplifying a very complex issue. So there's a lot of folks who have felt that the tree protections are mean that trees can't come down and shouldn't come down. And the city council is really grappling with trying to find out how do you retain as many trees as possible and what tree retention should you mandate while acknowledging the property rights of a person who has a property and wants to develop it. So generally what we do have though is extremely robust mitigation requirements. So no matter what happens on a property, there's a lot of replanting that is required. And one of the things the council is talking about is should that be even increased? Right? They're also looking at things like should we have stricter standards for retaining what we're calling landmark trees or significant trees, trees that are older with thicker trunks have been there longer. But right now, today, our code does allow you to take down a tree if you need to take down that tree to develop the property. And it's jarring to see, no question about it. And it's something that we'd like to see not happen. But at the same time, we are an urbanizing area and we're close to Seattle. And it's a place where when people want to build, the only way to build right now is on a property that has trees on it. And so that does mean the trees come down. But we definitely focus on making sure that more trees are planted. And the city council is actually looking at expanding those kind of programs dramatically, like allowing what we're calling tree in lieu, where people might invest in a tree account where we can plant trees in other places, or to allow people to plant trees on public right-of-ways or in parks. So any way that we can increase the overall tree canopy, we want to do as well. But finding the right balance between development and tree retention is something I think every community struggles with, and certainly Kirkland has not figured out the right mix yet.
We are seeing an uptick in homelessness, particularly in downtown Kirkland. Can you comment on any type of services or anything besides I know you discussed a little bit about affordable housing, but in terms of more of a crisis level thing that is happening with assisting with this growing issue that we are starting to see?
So one of the sort of key investments in the summer action plan city council approved was to try to find a way to address this issue, right? And so Kirkland has had a pretty thoughtful and compassionate program and also a little bit of luck, right? We have heard loud and clear from everybody that they don't want to see what's happening in Seattle happen on the east side, and particularly to happen in Kirkland. And the city council has really tried to balance, compassion services with not criminalizing homelessness, right? It's not a crime to be homeless, and we don't want it to be. So what we have done is we've tried to invest all along the spectrum. So the city of Kirkland itself has put several $1 million towards the women and family shelter in Kirkland. And through Arch, we've put millions more to not just the Kirkland shelter, but also the men's shelter in Bellevue and the youth shelters that Friends of Youth run in both Kirkland and in the city of Redmond. So, in the end, you have to have places that people can go, right? And so we want to increase the amount of shelter. We want to increase places where people can stay. That's one of the reasons a permanent supportive shelter is on our work program, that we want to have a place where you can have 150 beds that people can be in and get services so that they can start to heal. And so we're looking at that. Those are the longer term, much more expensive solutions. At the same time, we're trying to make sure that our neighborhood resource officers and police are really compassionate about finding people and asking them if we can take them to services. And we have been, where I say some of the luck comes in, we've been very successful that our sort of kinder, gentler approach has resulted in people being willing to go to places where there's shelter and to get services. So that only works as long as there's places for them to go. And so we're looking at what happens if everything is full and we still need to find a place for someone to go. So we're beginning to look at those options as well. So in the summer action plan, there's almost $200,000 additional dollars set aside for homelessness services. And it's something we've talked about a lot with Public Works and Parks and Police about how can we work quickly but compassionately with people who are homeless downtown or anywhere in the city. So I think we have a pretty good game plan, but it is a intractable problem that nobody has solved. And we're trying to solve it every level we can along the spectrum. The one last link that I would make is that the Community Responders Program that I talked about under the resolution 5434, that will also be one of the ways that we help get people to the shelter and services they need, because when we get those positions hired, there'll be additional social workers and mental health professionals and caseworkers who can really track a person who is homeless and help them connect with places like HopeLink and others, and really make sure that they're successful in getting off the street and getting into some sort of program. So we're investing a lot to try to solve this, but it is a tough problem, and we're just going to stay on it and do the best we can to be part of the solution.
Thank you. And last question is, when is City Hall scheduled to be open again to the public?
Sure, that's a great question. So right now we are tentatively looking at August 1st as being the reopening to the public. We've got still a lot of work to do to figure out what that means. Right now, all of the services the city provides, with the exception of passports, can be done virtually. So the good news is there hasn't been anything missing from people's ability to access City Hall, but we all know people want to come into City Hall. It's the people's building. And so we want to reopen. Passports, the reason that can't be provided is actually federal law requires an in-person verification of passports. And so we just haven't been able to do that with COVID. So we hope to reopen that when City Hall reopens. That's the one service that we've been missing. So we're, like everyone else, working through issues of how do you bring staff back? Can staff be more of a hybrid with sometimes at home and sometimes, at the city? How do we maintain the benefits that everyone's received from being able to do all of our services virtually, but at the same time provide the convenience of coming in? So these are all nuances that we're working through. Like everyone else, we're struggling with this issues of what do you do with people who are vaccinated and who are not vaccinated, both people coming into City Hall and employees who work at City Hall, and how do you know and how do you verify? And so there's a lot of complexities to reopening, and that's one of the reasons we're not trying to be open on July 1st. We're trying to make sure that we're doing it thoughtfully. So August 1st is our tentative date, unless something changes. That's when you're going to see City Hall reopen. Our community centers are going to open up sooner. Programs are going to be happening at the community centers, the North Kirkland Community Center and the Peter Cook Community Center. They're going to be open with COVID protocols and just for people who are in the programs that Parks is putting on in the short term. But we see those being fully opened this fall as well. So we all want to get back to seeing our residents again in person. So we're looking forward to that, but we need to do it safely and thoughtfully.
Wonderful. Thank you. Do you have any last words for us, Kurt or Carrie from Port of Seattle, either one of you?
I just want to say again, thank you. Always appreciate the opportunity to address the group. And if anyone wants me to come to another group, I'm happy to do that as well. But thank you for everything the Chamber has done for this last 18 months. You've been an extraordinary partner. And thank you to all the businesses for choosing Kirkland.
Thank you, Kurt. And thank you, Carrie from Port of Seattle. Thank you so much to the Port for your amazing support. Thank you to Kurt Triplett for speaking today, and to the whole City Council for all of your hard work and city staff for all of your hard work over this past year. Any last words, Carrie?
Just once again, so proud to be a partner with Kirkland Chamber and with everything going on at the city. Kurt, we're very fortunate to have you here in our community, both you, Kurt, as well as Samantha, and the leadership in Kirkland.
All right. Thanks to you both, and thanks everyone for watching. And if you do have any follow-up questions for either Kurt or Carrie, please email the Kirkland Chamber. Easiest way is to just go to info@kirklandchamber.org, and it will be filtered to the appropriate person. Thank you so much for watching. This will be available for recording on our YouTube channel soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.